welcome my next guest, Fox News foreign policy contributor, Kiron Skinner. Kiron, we love having you on. Your reaction to this?
There's so much going on around Venezuela, and the president's powerful statement at the State of the Union recognizing the opposition leader, so to speak, in Venezuela, Guaido, really speaks to how difficult it will be to put the pieces in place to have a representative and free government in that country. We can recognize him. Nearly 60 other countries have done so. The support for Guaido is both bipartisan in the United States and transnational, but we're all up against 20 years of socialist rule where the country's basically been destroyed. And when we saw what we saw with Guaido returning home was the sheer magnitude of what he has to fight against.
Yeah, and our reporting based on sources in Venezuela show it took just one generation to turn, to your point, to turn Venezuela from one of the world's top economies into a communist collapse and crackdown. Nearly 10,000 murdered by the communist regime since 2018, thousands arbitrarily arrested, tortured. Venezuelans tell us that their socialist collapse began with politicians promising to do things like fix income inequality, do government-run health care, mandate higher wages, free college, the same as what Bernie Sanders wants. And our show, The Evening Edit, was out there first showing images of people in Venezuela under this communist collapse, literally eating out of the back of garbage trucks, eating out of garbage bags. Your reaction to that?
You're right to say that Senator Sanders has a similar platform to the political reality of Venezuela, and we're watching in real time what that failure looks like. What concerns me about the senator is that he's not been able to really condemn the regime in any forceful way, and he doesn't seem to understand that Guaido is involved in an epic struggle between totalitarianism and freedom. And we need all hands on deck. This is a bipartisan effort, and the senator hasn't really taken a firm stand in defense of freedom.
The media increasingly, to your point, Kiron, the media is now asking, why is Bernie Sanders silent on this? Why does he refuse to call for the communist dictator to step down? And why isn't he recognizing Guaido, who stands for freedom? Watch this.
Do you consider Juan Guaido the legitimate president of Venezuela?
No, I think what has to happen right now, I think there are serious questions about the recent election. There are many people who feel it was a fraudulent election.
Why have you stopped short of calling Maduro of Venezuela a dictator?
Well, I think it's fair to say that the last election was undemocratic. But there are still democratic operations taking place in that country.
Okay, here's the United Nations saying Venezuelans spend an average of 10 hours a day lining up for food. We've had now nearly 10,000 people, according to the UN, murdered by the Venezuelan government security forces since 2018. Nearly 33,000 protests, 3 million have fled, nearly 13,000 arrested arbitrarily. To the food lines, let's listen to Bernie Sanders at one point saying food lines are a good thing. Watch this.
It's funny, sometimes American journalists talk about how bad a country is because people are lining up for food. That's a good thing. In other countries, people don't line up for food. The rich get the food and the poor starve to death.
Aaron, your reaction?
That's a bit shameful, but I really have to say, I believe the senator doesn't understand when he says that there are democratic forces operating in the country, that Nicolas Maduro, is in charge of the armed forces, the police, the courts, and that Congress is more on the side of the opposition. This is a deeply divided country where the legislature has declared its 2018 election to be illegitimate. It is not a country that's operating on democratic cylinders at all.
Does this hurt Bernie Sanders if he's a nominee?
I think what it does is make us think more carefully about Bernie Sanders, what his foreign policy would be. We haven't pressed him on that. And that's what you're doing tonight, is beginning a conversation about what would a Sanders foreign policy platform look like if he is able to win the nomination. And we're really concerned because every American president has focused on the epic struggle that we're facing right now in Venezuela.
Kiron Skinner, love your insights and perspective. Come back soon. Thank you for your service to the country.